Welcome to another live stream, organized stalking, open interview night. And hopefully we get a lot of people in here because, there's a lot of people that are contacting me for interviews, or even in the past, they say, I'd love to share my story. Well, tonight is your chance. The rules, of course, are no swearing, no promoting any other religions but Christianity, no mentioning names or channels, no medical advice. By the way, I'm not a doctor, and this is for entertainment and educational purposes only. We do have someone in there. Welcome, John Hoochin. Welcome to the live stream. Is it just me, and I know there's probably not that many people at 4, that's enough. Is it just me, or do you find yourself sitting around wondering if this stuff is even real? Does that ever happen to you guys? Because I know it is, but, and I've talked about this whole thing, it's arranged in such a way that it's so immaculately hidden. It's like a spider web, very scientific. You think it's just a primitive cacophony of games and narcissistic supply and sadism and maybe some crude experimentation, but really it's very scientific. And I think that comes from the spiritual foundations of this whole thing, that a lot of people don't like that it's arranged in a way similar to what I was talking about last night, to where it creates a medium, creates a framework. And that framework is used in a way where you can do kind of whatever you want with it. Or at least that's what they want to do. If you're the perpetrator, that you can take someone into, a reprogrammed state where they could be controlled or maybe even refined, like snake pit therapy. My opinion is, Lord, he's the only one that really does that. These people are evil. They'll try to gaslight you and make you believe that that's what they're doing. Or they could take you into a place of disillusionment or psychosis, right? To get you to believe things that are not true, to take you into propositional tyranny. And I've talked about the dangers of psychosis for targets because it's real. It's like, I think I mentioned it last night, that one of the huge dangers of the sensitization, of the plausible deniability, of the ad populum environmental tyranny, the people involved exponentially, is the gaslighting. And there's a lot of people out there that probably don't even know that these people around them are manipulating them. People in their family, people in their social circle, people at their workplace. We've talked about the perps plenty of times. We've talked about some of the other things, in case you're one of those individuals out there who's just running through here. Are you a targeted individual? It seems to be a point of contention because there's a lot of different opinions about who is a real victim of gang stalking and who isn't. To me, it doesn't matter that much. Even if someone, it matters, but if someone comes in, we'll just say that they're getting harassed by, just a gang of individuals, as the word gang stalking, and they don't really know the exponential, framework and the game and the psychological techniques that are being used on targets where they can't get away. They're running maybe to another, city, maybe across the United States or maybe even out of the country, and they just can't get away. But there are people out there who are experiencing community-based harassment, and they're welcome too. So I don't make a big deal out of that, but there are things that targeted individuals have in common, and I've talked about that before, that there are symptoms that seem to be prevalent all the way through the targeted individual community. And that would be the ringing of the ears, or maybe one ear. A lot of targets will talk about the left ear. A feeling of pressure in the side of maybe their temple or on the side of their head. A feeling that there is a magnetic field that is switching around them. I've heard of targets talk about the fact that it even feels like something in their brain is folding. And I've heard that before. Some targets will talk about that bell tone. Not just tinnitus, but like it sounds kind of like tinnitus, but it's temporary. It might just, start up and just start, maybe for 30 seconds or something, or maybe even just for a few seconds. And then there's the targeted individuals who talk about the V2K. And some of those experiences are also different. Some people will talk about a constant 24/7 chatter, a narrative that doesn't even really involve anything in particular, just a lot of different things. And then there's the repetitive stuff that seems to be triggered by things within their psyche. And I've talked about how, they will instill these things within targets through sensitization and through neurolinguistic programming and other things, other techniques involving sensitization and amalgamated triggers. Because it's almost like listening to a song on the radio. And I've noticed that, some songs kind of sound similar, and you'll hear the melody, and it's like it'll trigger that other memory of that other song when it's just something, about the way we're programmed, and they take advantage of those things. Some of the other symptoms are cold flashes, hot flashes. Some targets will talk about their skin burning, even difficulty speaking with the onset of some of these other symptoms, the sensation. As I've talked about electricity, some targets will talk about feeling zaps, maybe even in their back, maybe in their spine, or in the back of their head or something like that. Intrusive thoughts that, and I've mentioned before that the isolation that targeted individuals deal with, I mean, you're going to have a lot of stuff bouncing around in your head anyway. And, we all kind of talk to ourselves. I mean, it's just, we're always thinking. It's like when you run into those perps that are just talking out loud all the time. Are you talking to me? It's like, I'm thinking out loud. Well, could you do a little quieter? But you know what they're doing. They're using it for plausible deniability with these directed conversations. And you can tell they're doing it on purpose. But it goes even further with that isolation, and you have intrusive thoughts, or maybe even get into the place of self-scrutiny. And I've talked about that with targets, is that they want that. They want you to become your handler. They want you to be your own worst enemy. Moving into scrupulosity, where you're kind of judging yourself, and it's almost like a like paranoia on steroids. Don't think of whatever, and you end up thinking of it like, don't think of pink elephants. It's kind of like when some of those perps come up and trigger you, and I didn't want to shake you up, but, and then they'll start talking about something, or I don't mean to be intrusive, but of course you do. You're just trying to give yourself an out. I've talked about the perps. We can talk about those guys. Sudden extreme moods that come on. Maybe anxiety, maybe even just an uneasiness or a feeling of doom. Some targets will talk about that. I've had that kind of stuff happen. Or even just an onset of depression, or even a lot of targets will talk about the fact that they just feel, I've had this personally, where you just feel like you're going to pass out. You can't stay awake. Or even when you wake up at night and you think you hear something in the house. A lot of targets will talk about the break-ins, and they'll come in while you're sleeping. There's nothing worse than, and a lot of targets, it's like, I think it was Scoozy last night said she finally checked into the hospital because she couldn't deal with it. And you're afraid to go to sleep in your own house. You're afraid to leave. A lot of targets are chased out of their dwellings. But, you wake up and you think you heard something. But for some reason, you just can't stay awake. It's almost like you've been drugged. And maybe you were. Sometimes targets will talk about that. I've had it happen to me. It's very disturbing. At the beginning of my targeting, they did that. The other stuff really didn't bother me, I don't think, as much as they thought it would. But it was all kind of, I'm not trying to downplay the paranoia that was caused, by the directed conversations and the stalking and all the weird stuff and the directed conversations and all that. But when they broke into my house and drugged me, took my clothes off and everything, that got my attention. And a lot of targets will talk about some of the extreme incremental increases within their harassment, that it has a type of crescendo effect. And then it just stops, or it turns into that plausible deniability, very covert harassment where, they're just playing games with you, laughing. And see, after you start looking for it, after you know that you're being stalked and harassed, because they want you to know that. And most of the time, targets don't know what the hell's going on, because these people, they just look like they're just losing it. They're upset. They're talking a bunch of weird stuff. People are acting angry all of a sudden. It's not something that is normal. It's not something that would make sense to targets, because all of a sudden people just start treating them differently. They become part of the fringe of the social circle. They're the scapegoat of the family. Unless you're one of those targets that's, been targeted from birth. We got a lot of them out there. It almost makes you wonder if they're just waiting to light it off on some of these individuals that will call in and give their testimony and say that around the age 40, all of a sudden they start hearing voices, when you have the literature within schizophrenia and those things, that at least as far as you're going to go with, what they have as far as their theories on it, usually starts maybe in their 20s or a little before that. I like I said, I'm not a doctor, but I have to be my own by default, because that's just the way it is. Some other targets will have the onset of panic. And it looks like we do have someone in here. And so I guess with no further ado, and the thing I will say again, please, no swearing, no mentioning names. You got to have your first name or first initial. We're going to turn off your camera. And I think we're going to probably wait a little while to have you on again, sir, because we've had you in there quite a few times in the past. And it's not that you can't come back. But I just want to give someone else a chance to give their testimony, because I think we've had you on for almost 2 hours now in the last week, and so we're gonna go ahead and wait on that one, sir. And I do want you back in though, but I want to get someone else's testimony up there. And the other things that I've heard of from targets, along with the sudden onset of different symptoms, and we've talked about some of those. Some of it's even the sensation of needles or buzzing, and I've talked about, sometimes targets, you have health issues, and you assume, and I've done this, you assume that it's maybe a directed energy weapon or something. I'm not saying that what you're experiencing is not, but a lot of times it could be just something, because you're processing information differently after you've been harassed and threatened with all these weird conversations, and all these things that are happening to targets. It's when something happens, of course it's going to be the first thing that you think of, right? Of course it's going to be the first thing that you assume when someone breaks out in a hysterical, spasmodic fit of laughter, looking at you from across the room. But it could be a coincidence. Right? It could be a coincidence that you've got neuropathy or something like that. Or it could be something else. And, that I've mentioned that too, that, It's really difficult as a targeted individual because you want affirmation, and sometimes there is things going on, and that people are doing stuff to you or whatever, but you can't say anything. And if you do, and even if you're right, the people are going to have that. Well, are you sure? You may haven't gone to see a doctor or nothing. Maybe there's, and so I'm not trying to be irritating, but sometimes that kind of thing happens, and you have to be aware of it. People will become lightheaded, and they will experience a hard time maintaining a body temperature, or at least homeostasis with their body temperature. There's even strange dreams. A lot of targets will talk about that. And we might have to do a live stream just with that, because there are a lot of targets that talk about that whole thing, that there's no possible way that the things that they are thinking about or dreaming about could have come from their mind. And sometimes it's in unison with other things that they are dealing with. I don't know if I missed anything with those symptoms. I know there's a lot of stuff that targets will talk about along with that. Changes in their appetite, of course, because of the stress, and even, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, that derealization. And I'll say it again: is it just me, or have you guys wondered at times if this stuff is even possible that's happening to you? Of course it is, but within your conceptual framework, there's just no way, right? Just for the stuff that I've dealt with, being harassed, even by family members, having them conspire to drive me crazy and then try to throw me in a mental institution. I had to go to court and I won. That was interesting. And stuff that goes way beyond that. And some targets are dealing with that where there's attempted murder involved, right? And, just the whole act of doing this to someone is basically attempted murder. The other thing that I'd like to mention now, as I've said that, is that there, a lot of people will say, well, how are these people involved? How are they becoming involved in my harassment? Some of it's spiritual manipulation. In fact, I was talking to a targeted individual a little while ago, and they asked me, how is it that these people seem to know? Is it, what are they all in some kind of a weird group online or something? And sometimes they are, I guess. But sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with that. It's like literally like a spiritual hive. And some of the people that are doing these things to targets, you assume that they have knowledge, right? I've talked about the themes and all those things where targets can be attacked with directed conversations or different themes or different keywords. And, sometimes they don't really know a whole lot. They might be getting paid to say something to you to freak you out. But of course, the target, they're going to assume that they're, transcendently, aware of everything. They're reading their mind or something. When these people are just, they're just clay puppets like everyone else. Now, some of them are in communion with spiritual entities and stuff like that are malevolent, and that's where you get into the real creepy directed conversations that have, where it's almost like they're reading your mind, or whether they're, aware of future events. And I've talked about how God will allow those things. And that's in Deuteronomy 13, I do believe, where he will allow those things to come to pass to test people. And when you get into the secret societies, they have that stuff in there. And it's the destiny philosophy of the polytheism. They have all the same characters as Christianity. They just look at them differently, right? It's different. The Christ of the polytheism is just another, just another God in the pantheon. He's not, the one. He's not supreme and set apart. And so you get into some really strange things, but they have that hidden knowledge and secret wisdom. And some of that stuff involves prophecies, and it's so convincing. Even when you get into some of the stuff, I've talked to people that say, are you sure that reincarnation isn't real? Doc? And I'm saying, I know it's not. And well, yeah, but how would this person know things? They were an 8-year-old child and they knew all the stuff, that person living, 300 years before them would have known. And you get into this philosophy of the different lifetimes and the recapitulation of souls and all this stuff. But you see the familiar spirits out there, and this is part of the framework of the spiritual dimension. They follow around people. Sometimes they even possess them. And they're involved in lineages. They're involved in geographical territories, and they have that information. And I've even heard targets talk about V2K sounding like family members or dead relatives or maybe a girlfriend or a boyfriend or something. And, then they assume that these people are involved somewhere, hooked up through, some kind of hydrodyning thing or something to where they're like part of the harassment. And, I've seen targets accuse people, but they don't even know because it's not them. It's literally a spirit masquerading as someone or propagating the delusion of reincarnation. That's what I believe. And it's really weird when targets start dealing with this harassment because they can get that freaky where they can deal with that kind of thing. As far as the perps, I suppose we could talk about them after I go into the comments and see what you guys are doing out there. Sentinel, welcome to the live stream. Videos, welcome to the live stream. Okay. MI6, welcome to the live stream. Okay, we've got a lot of lurkers, it looks like. John Hoochin, obviously. I think I welcomed you in. That's correct. Okay. And I am a victim of gang stalking. Welcome to the live stream. And I got to get my little bifocal thing out here real quick in order to read this. Sucks to get old. And we're going to put this one up on the screen. I am a victim of gang stalking says, what they do is reading my mind and confronting me with voice to skull technology, V2K. That's a horrible thing. I have dream manipulation too, but they took sexual dreams away from me. Okay, well that might not be a bad thing. So at least it could be worse. I'm not downplaying it because it looks like you're getting nightmare dreams. And of course, sometimes they'll mix that stuff together. It's weird how, you don't know exactly what's going on. I've talked about, how the spiritual dimension and the tech is interconnected in the sense that that's where it comes from. At least that's what I believe. But it looks like you're dealing with some pretty intense stuff. Thanks for the comment. Okay. And we've got one here from Lesko. How do you deal with street theater? Well, just like anything in gang stalking, first and foremost, by default, you want to ignore and not react. And you can actually kind of have some fun with it because they want a reaction. So if you're aware, at first it's kind of hard because it triggers you and they'll do something to get your attention and you'll look. You got to get to the point, and a lot of veteran targets know what I'm talking about, and it might take a while, but you got to get to the point where you're basically not reacting to anything. You're like, you might as well be on another planet. That's how I do it, man. Because I literally tune everything out. I'm aware of everything, and at the same time, I can tune everything out. And it's like, sometimes I've noticed that there were things going on where I could hear somebody was getting louder and doing some stuff, but I didn't care. And then I realized later they were trying to get my attention. But they hate that. They hate it when they're going to a lot of effort to do it. And so for you not to notice or even give any inkling is kind of fun for the target, but it really frustrates them But the other bonus is that then they get more aggressive and they become more obvious just to try to get, your attention because they want that plausible deniability. They don't want, you know, they want you to get called out so you look crazy, right? They want you to react to something that they can just, downplay or accuse you, right? And when you don't do anything, when you don't react, when you don't acknowledge them, not only is it frustrating, but it kills the gaslighting effect, and it gets rid of that plausible deniability. And if it's real obvious, like I've said this a lot, you have a very obvious day of harassment, consider it a blessing. Yeah, it sucks. And, I mean, when people are interfering and hindering you and getting in your business, it's not fun. But when it's obvious, playing that little game where you're not noticing it, you can anchor yourself to that because sometimes this stuff can go on for a long time and it will change. They'll see that stuff is not going to work and they'll start playing the subtle game with you. And, that's really where, targets start wondering if, maybe I did get driven nuts. I don't know if this person is a gang stalker or I'm just tripping out. And that's fair to say, because sometimes it gets to the point where but the thing is, you shouldn't even be thinking about it, right? You have protocols, at least I do. I live by protocols, and that's one of them. By default, I really don't have to trust anyone, right? I just have to do what I need to do. And for, this kind of sad but true, but it's true for everyone at a certain degree, is you don't really want to be in the place or have to rely upon anyone, right? Especially as a targeted individual, especially what you've seen up to this point about the fickleness and the frailty that is around you and how easily people can be manipulated. It's horrifying. And it's, then you realize that you invested time and you gave pearls to swine. And that's, they even want you to feel guilty about that. I've had that happen too, where they'll start gaslighting you and tell you the story about the scorpion and the frog and how the frog shouldn't have let the scorpion get a ride across the river because it's a scorpion and it's going to sting him. And, the frog should have known better. And then, of course, you're the frog. You should have known that these people were going to harass you and torture you. And, they played you. And it's like they're just avoiding responsibility for what they're doing, and they do that. We may as well talk about the perps for a while because, that's what they do. And there's always a lot of coincidences around them in there, right? They're always apologizing. They always deny what's going on. They play stupid. They try to obfuscate what's happening. They always reframe everything and try to push it back on you. They love to accuse you. And that's why I said, when you get that plausible deniability, you can't win a conversation like that with them. It's like when you deal with a perp who's pretending to be a target and they start minimizing you. They already triggered you. You've already become emotional and you didn't see them coming. And so they've got the advantage. And really the only thing to do at that point is just, you don't demand logic from them. You don't demand an answer from anybody because that makes you vulnerable and needy, right? You need affirmation, really? I get it. I'll give it to you, but you're not going to get it from them. You're not going to get it from one of the perps. They like to provoke targets. A lot of times, I've heard this from targets. Now it's for me. I don't even tell anybody where I live. I just don't because you have so many infiltrators, and I've heard this from a lot of targets. They always show up at the most inconvenient times, just when you're ready to fall asleep or you got something going on. Or they'll all show up at once and just be weird. And it's, it sucks to be a target, but those are the kind of things that I've had to do. And it's not that I think that everybody needs to be isolated or whatever, but it's just that much more realistic for me at this time in my life. And a lot of guys, when they get my age, they start doing it anyway. It's different. It's just different, when you're in your 50s and your 60s than it is back when you're 20 or 30 years old. you know, you have the polite attacker, you have that sarcastic perp. But they're real, ooey gooey. It's like they're there just to help you, but really they're setting you up for a sabotage, or they're just getting close to you so they can, do some recon. And and I've mentioned this too. When people start asking you a lot of questions, it's like that guy. I think it was last night was talking about being led in his, the questions with these women that just wanted to hang out with him. That's suspicious. It's a CIA technique, by the way. And I think I mentioned Operation Climax, Midnight Climax or Operation Climax or something like that with MK Ultra. They did that, and it's good bait. There's a lot of fake targets out there, and they'll play a lot of these games. Sometimes these guys are, the over friendly neighbor, you know, or whatever, and sometimes just the way they are is annoying to targets, and they probably know that because you're dealing with things, and I've mentioned this before, that are so far outside the lateral comparison framework of what people are dealing with that you're isolated just in your circumstances, and then here comes, carefree Homer Simpson, and what do you know, neighbor, and it's just, and they're being overly, energetic and everything. And, they're probably using a noise campaign on you and keeping you awake, and who knows, but they can play these games with you. You got the obvious perp where they're not trying to hide it with plausible deniability at all. They're the overt stalkers, and they're very obvious. They are, maximizing on unorthodox behavior, maybe even mixed with personal information to get your attention. And I've seen some real creepy stuff when it comes to those guys. Sometimes they're the most effective because they just come out and, no matter what, they're gonna trigger you a little bit. Some of those other guys involved in the theatrical stuff or some of the more elaborate setups that targets deal with, and they do that too. It's sometimes, it's like I said, it's kind of funny when the target doesn't catch on. And I think we've had some people in talking about that before, where they were using directed conversations on targets, and they just, well, it's a real interesting coincidence. I had something like that happen to me last night, and they're just kind of rolling their eyes, going, "You just don't get it, man. We're messing with you. We're letting you know we're watching you, you dummy." But you don't, because you're not supposed to be thinking that way, and that's part of the problem. When targets get harassed, is they start processing information that way. And then everything turns into a direct conversation, and it's not necessarily like that. The covert perps, the invisible perps, of course, the directed conversations, the directed energy weapons, and some of the stuff that we mentioned with the symptoms that targets deal with, where you have, all of a sudden a change in your mood, but it's so noticeable and obvious. Something's messing with you. It's either some kind of a spiritual thing or some technology or something. And it's not natural. And a lot of times they'll flip, whatever it is, whether it's a frequency or whether it's some kind of spiritual thing, they'll flip you, in between different, phases. In other words, you'll be real happy or whatever, or you'll be having a good day, and they'll let you do that. Sometimes they'll even kind of generate that stuff, at least hypothetically, in my opinion, just so it's that much more disturbing when the chain yanker comes into your world, and and then they'll start hitting the other buttons, and it's it's that much more irritating because you were having a good day, and here comes the yanker, here comes the perp, and it's just because if everything is bad all the time, there's not going to be a huge switch. It's not a perceived loss, and they like to create that perceived loss. It's kind of like that trick where people will give that person the fake lottery ticket, or whatever. And they were in a pretty stable mood before that, but then they go on a huge high thinking that they've won a bunch of money, to a ridiculous low when they find out that their expectations and all that joy and all that was just nothing more than a joke. And it's it's kind of similar to that. The leverage perp. Well, I've met this guy was talking about that earlier. You don't want to have to depend on anybody if possible as a target. Um, Financial independence, emotional independence, being self-sufficient in every possible way, without denying the fact that you're human. And of course, I've mentioned this, that, that's one of the reasons I do these videos, not only for me, but for you, because we can connect and deal with these things together and have affirmation. And of course, the spiritual stuff as well, with the perps. I'm going to go back out of the comments and just see what's going on. And I'm also going to check. And it doesn't look like we have anyone else back there. Let me see. Fairy, integrity, hilarious. Welcome to the live stream. Okay. All eyes on me. Welcome to the live stream. Let's see what's going on with this comment here. Let's get this going. They're not doing anything anymore to me. If anything, I'm the one that's messing with their minds. Now, by using directed conversations and indirect comments and facial expressions, so you've got them in your game, huh? Okay. All right. Well, I guess they deserve it. They started it, huh? Okay. And we've got something that I think all targets have dealt with. I am a victim of gang stalking. Says, I so depressed and suicidal too. I'm sorry to tell you, I'm being gang stalked for too long. So you've been dealing with this stuff for a long time. You need a time of refreshing. So we're just going to throw a prayer out there for I am a victim of gang stalking, that you would have a time of refreshment and that you would experience supernatural peace as you turn to the Lord in prayer. And other targets out there who are dealing with heavy harassment. There's a lot of veterans out there that you would have relief and peace in the name of the Most High. Okay. An average Joe, welcome to the live stream. Okay. And it looks like we have someone out here. Welcome to the live stream.
Hello, sir. How you doing? How's everybody doing?
Well, I'm doing well. Thank you. And would you like to share, or do you have something specific? Go ahead.
First, I just want to tell everybody that's been going through it, that's having a hard time, to just stay strong and actually like zoom out and take a closer look at what exactly they're doing. Because if you think about it, all their tactics are really silly and childish. I can laugh about it now because it is really ridiculous. I don't know if you guys used this example before, but you remember when we were younger, or even adults do this now, when you hide behind the door or wall and you wait for somebody to come out and jump and scare you?
Yes.
Okay, so after 2 or 3 times or however many times we stopped reacting, we already expected it, right? And we kind of looked at the person like, why are you serious? Like, you're still trying? And that's how I look at these people, because that's exactly basically what they're doing. And I just kind of like, I kind of feel ashamed for them and embarrassed for them that they're still trying, because like that's not a life to live, to be like obsessing so much and dedicating so much of your life to doing this to people. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, they should be ashamed, absolutely, and it is childish, but it's more reckless than that. And the thing is, you can kind of look at it like that, and I think you're right. But their intentions are far more malevolent, I think. Because even that comment we had earlier about people being depressed and everything, that's what happens. And so yeah, it's more than childish. I think it's just downright evil. But yeah,
I mean, like I'm the one that said in the comment section where I'm the one in charge now. Like I turned it on them, like, and they know that. And I'm the one using direct conversations, indirect comments, passive aggressive. Like, you know, I gray rock and tunnel vision when I walk by them, and I'm kind of smiling and smirking as I walk by because I can see in the corner of my eye that they're looking at me. And by me doing that, it's basically telling them that I know what they're doing, and I just think it's a joke. And I see
yeah,
their
well, yeah,
reactions on their, and I see their reactions on their faces, and they just don't like. They're shocked, like they don't know what to say or do. They're like, "Wow, like it's not working anymore."
yeah. And the other thing, I used to do that too, and it would kind of confuse people. They were like wondering if I was one of them. It seemed like sometimes. Because I had some of them come up and start talking to me, trying to do a direct conversation on someone else in bars and stuff like that. And I'm like, you're in the wrong neck of the woods now.
Well,
You
I mean,
know,
if anything, you could have played dumb and just try to get some more information out of them to try
yeah.
to get some more proof. Because what I'm doing also is I'm taking notes. And I think they know that I'm doing that because the more notes that I take, the more I'm able to reverse engineer it to either use to be able to back on them, or to get more proof, or to be able to get figure out ways to program their minds. Because if you think about it, what is the second most valuable currency right now that we have in this world with all this technology and social media? It's attention, right?
Okay.
Attention.
Okay.
Because that's why all these social media companies want us to be so consumed in the social media content. So what I'm trying to say is that if they're paying attention so much to us, then we can use what is it called?
Disinformation.
No, subliminal messages.
Oh, okay.
Again, by programming their minds to do and say and think what we want them to do, and that's what I'm working on right now. Because I'm not playing. These people are going to back the f off of me much sooner than later, and I'm not playing anymore. And once it works, I'm either going to write a book or start a podcast or make videos also to help other TIs do the same thing. I'm going to shut this
Interesting.
down. Yeah,
Okay. Well,
yeah.
you're definitely in solution mode. Have you ever experienced the food tampering or anything like that?
Um, not really. I mean, maybe if they have, but I
Well, you'd
don't
know.
know.
You'd probably know.
Um, I mean, no, I've never gotten really, really sick. And
Okay.
the other thing that I've done too, because if they are listening and watching me, I've literally told them, and I don't know if this works for them, but it's in a way it's kind of planting a seed and said, if you guys mess with my food or come in my apartment when I'm not here, it's just going to go back to you like tenfold. Like it's not like I'm not worried about it. I have no fear. I'm not worried. I'm not scared anymore.
Hmm.
I literally have no fear at all whatsoever.
Oh,
Because
okay.
even if anything happens to me, like, well, that's just the cards I was dealt, and they're just gonna get the worst karma back to them, if anything. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, it does return eventually. And I've talked about that before. One of the most confusing aspects is that sometimes they get away with it for a long time, and so that really demoralizes targets. Have you had anybody break into your house while you were sleeping or anything like that?
Um, I I know that I've heard you or other people say that they've had like stuff moved around, but I'm if they have, I don't know.
You
I,
never had that?
I
Okay.
well, because I'm a really light sleeper, and if they've been watching me, then they know that.
Well,
So I
they'll
don't.
drug you or they'll fume you. They'll knock you out. They'll use technology to do it sometimes too. Literally.
I think that I'm pretty sure it was done to me years ago when I was still like in drinking and doing drugs, where I got overdosed by a person I was hanging out with, and they overdosed me where I couldn't even like get up or walk or anything. It was pretty crazy.
Okay, that
But like
counts. That
but
counts.
like but like I said, that was many years ago. But I think now that they see that I know what's going on and I can see right through it, I think that's one of the reasons why they backed off tremendously off of me. Like so.
Have you ever dealt with an intense noise campaign that kept you up for
Oh,
extended periods of time?
like a while ago, also, like many years ago, when I didn't know what was going on, when I first started like noticing all these patterns. But like I said, over the years, when I've literally laughed at them and said, "This is ridiculous," like if they're gonna do that, then that means that they're bothering my neighbors too. And if my neighbors are involved, then they're willing to put up with this nonsense just to try to disturb me. How ridiculous! How pathetic! Like
Yeah.
seriously, don't you think? Like,
Well, yeah, that's the thing, though, is that sometimes the people that they pay to do it or whoever is convinced that they don't care, and then sometimes the neighbors will chase them off. But like you said, sometimes they become involved in it. What's the longest you ever stayed awake without the aid of caffeine or anything else before because of gang stalking? Have you had the extended sleep deprivation done?
probably just a couple days.
Couple
But
days.
but but
Okay.
but the crazy thing is that even when I'm tired, I've always been able to function. Like I still push through. Like I've even still
Okay.
gone to the gym and hit the gym hard while I'm tired. And I think it's way because I was motivated to improve myself, and it's a big fu to them by still doing what I need to do and want to do, and like they're not going to stop me from doing it. So
Okay. Okay. Well,
so
is there anything else you'd like to add?
yeah, just one more thing to everybody in the chat that's maybe having a hard time, or just all of you in general. What has helped me tremendously is just start and researching and looking into um, being a stoic alchemist. Like there's a book called Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I'm pretty sure
Well,
you've heard of it.
we gotta be careful not to give spiritual or medical advice, sir.
It's not medical advice. It's called being an alchemist. Do you know what that is? I'm
Okay.
sure you know, right?
Well, it depends on what kind of alchemist you're talking about. I mean, what are you specifically talking about? Are you talking about like alchemy, as in like the Freemasonry alchemy?
No, like, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing with Freemasons. I'm talking about like just like looking at every situation, whether it's good or bad, and turning it into something positive or using it to benefit yourself in a positive way.
Oh, I see. So you're using it metaphorically. Okay.
Yes, yes. And also the
Okay.
Stoic principles is where obviously we can't control what happens around us, what people say or do, but we can control how we react to things.
No,
And
that
that's
makes
what's
sense.
and that's
Okay.
what's helped me tremendously also. So
Okay. Well,
stay
thank you very
stay,
much.
stay strong, everybody. Have a good night.
No, thanks for coming in. Okay. And okay. Well, that was interesting and a very positive attitude. And I've talked about the whole idea of getting into solution mode. Sometimes it can get, I don't know, a little dangerous. For people because when you're trying to solve it, sometimes you are fed up with all the things that are happening as a target. But it depends on what you're dealing with. In a situation like that, gentleman, it might work. But there's other situations out there, and I did mention some pretty intense things that can happen to targets that I don't think that individual has experienced those things yet. But they've experienced some other things. Obviously, to target an individual. But when you're getting real heavy harassment, going into solution mode can be dangerous because you're kind of playing into their game, and it's a natural reaction to become fierce and try to stand up. There's different reactions that we can have. We can go into the fetal position, or we can rise up to confront the attacker. Unfortunately, with gang stalking, um, there's a lot of them, and I've mentioned before that even when you retaliate or you get too puffed up, sometimes you're playing into a type of ego inflation, and they'll do that. They'll do that to targets just so they get cocky to where they think they're winning, and they're just being surrounded. And it's sad to see that happen because what they'll do then, they suck you into that game dynamic to where you're going to win and you're playing their game. And of course, as always, without chivalry, they come in with some kind of cheesy stuff and just, make your life a living hell. And that's very frustrating. It's not something that I do anymore. I usually just do the non-reactive. That gentleman did talk about gray rocking. That's good advice, though. That's good advice. Let's see who else is out here. Well, Lord be a lamp unto my feet. Welcome to the live stream. And you have some advice here. Praying and reading the word will help you hold on to God's promise. That's really good advice. Absolutely. And I've mentioned that many times everybody needs God. Everybody needs the Lord. But targets, you really need them. No getting around that. It's wake up call 101. And if there's anyone out there who hasn't made that decision to draw near to the Lord, I suggest you do it. And I've talked about some of the urgency in prophecy, that according to my calculations, looking at all these things, it could happen literally anytime, probably, within years or maybe just decades. So that's a good advice. So thank you for that. Okay. According to the Dead Sea Scrolls, we've got around another 48 to 49 years before that age of grace is over. And if you know anything about the Dead Sea Scrolls, very interesting. We have three 2,000-year eras, and of course, we are waiting for the 1,000-year millennium, which, in my opinion, is literal. And I get into some of the apocryphal stuff too, not holding it to canonical text, but I think that you can extrapolate things from that is in the canonical, the Bible. And anyway, I've got some of that up on the playlist. So I thought I'd just mention that. U7 Uber, welcome to the live stream. It looks like we have something here involving a noise campaign. How is fair noises in my apartment that I know they're not real sounds, like someone moving a desk on the floor or some type of furniture on the floor, and I know it's not real? Wow. So either you're talking about something that is like maybe part of a V2K thing, or maybe, they're literally like using a speaker and messing with you, or it's something else. I don't know, but I've heard a lot of targets talk about that, and it's weird because it's, who knows what they can do with the technology there. I've had that happen to where you could literally feel the pounding on the walls and stuff. And I'm not in an apartment. And this happened. In fact, I made a video about it where it sounded like somebody was, and it felt like it too, throwing around about a 30-gallon garbage sack full of trash is what it sounded like in my house. Scared the hell out of the cat. So I know it wasn't just me hallucinating. And you could feel it. You could feel that, when it sounded just like that. I don't know how else to describe it. And it would be, banging on the walls. Sound like somebody was just throwing it all over out in the living room. And I'm just in my bedroom going, what the hell? And my cat is just, freaked out. But you could feel it. And I got cameras all over in here. There was no one in here, man. There was no one. There was no speaker doing it, as far as I know. I've had that stuff happen periodically, and you just don't know if it's some kind of spiritual thing or just purely technological. Okay. Let's see what else we got out here. Okay. It looks like we got another one from U7 Uber. Sorry. Right now, I can hear like a hum noise from outside. It seems like it's some type of noise that just piggybacks off the Wi-Fi grid. Some people are very sensitive to that. Who knows? I'm not a doctor, and I'm not a scientist that could really explain all those things. But some people are warning that stuff is dangerous. And there've been lawsuits where people have, won because of that type of interference, or that type of noise pollution from transmitters or other things. So who knows? Maybe you're very sensitive to those things, or maybe it's something else. Maybe they're beaming something at you. You don't know. Wow. Alex Duncan, welcome. Dunnican, sorry. Welcome to the live stream. Request Truth, welcome. Okay. All right. You sure there's no one else out there that wants to come in? We've got a little bit of time left. I'm going to try and do this in an hour, but I suppose we could see if Buck is still out there. I could give you a little bit of time out here. Are you out there, Buck?
Yeah, man. Yeah, you hear me?
Yeah, yeah. I didn't mean to be
Okay.
rude, but you know
No
I
problem.
wanted to give people a chance,
No
and so
problem.
I'll give you the platform for a little while, as long as you don't give any spiritual advice or any medical advice.
Well, that might exclude me from being here.
Well, no, it doesn't, because you're not giving medical advice or spiritual advice.
Well,
Um,
I mean, if I advise people to pray, isn't that spiritual advice?
no, no, that's not spiritual advice. If you
Okay.
were to promote a doctrine, that would, I guess I should have specified that. Sorry about that.
No problem. I mean, what about like psychological advice, like what to do about it?
Well, I mean, you can have an opinion. I mean, you've talked about that uh, before.
Yeah.
As far as psychological, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, my whole premise to my channel, I'm not going to mention my channel, okay, is that it's about transitioning from being a TI to being a public investigator. Sorry.
Right. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you're kind of channeling the energy and trying to make it productive. Basically, is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, it's like it's like being like instead of being like reactive, I guess. But I mean, I'm saying instead of being like the victim, it's like turning it around, kind of,
Yeah, you're regaining a little bit of control that way, a little bit of power. That now, rather than to feel like a lab and a rat in a lab, you're kind of you're breaking free a little bit, at least mentally, if nothing else.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, no, that's I could see that.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else you'd like to share?
Well, I mean, the real reason why I'm here, man, is just because like I do care about TIs. I mean, I know that a lot of them are very skeptical of me. I'm certain of it. I'm certain of it. But I think that ultimately that if I keep being persistent, that'll kind of slowly go away. Because I'm like I feel like as I've been online for years or whatever, several years, I feel like I'm getting stronger, maybe more refined in how I go about doing things. And it's like even though my view count don't reflect that, I get like I put out all these videos, right? And like I get like 10 views here, 15, 20, 50, 80, and I get one that gets like a bunch of views. I'm like, what is going on? And it's like if I just keep at it, I think that ultimately I'll get more videos that have those views that will get the message out that really can help. Like because if I help other people, I'm helping myself. Really, you know
Right,
what I mean?
right.
If I'm really legitimately helping other people, then I am helping myself, and it'll come back to me, right? And in that sense, I'm a little selfish, right? But I mean, who wouldn't be, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
well, no, I mean
who
everybody does. Everybody's got you. Why shouldn't you be included in the benefit, right?
well, I'm not trying to force the issue in a sense, but I want to like if I put out the altruistic humanitarian effort, right, and I do my part to try to make the world a better place in my own little way, right. And if I have found a little bit of a solution, if I have found a way to turn the tables a little bit, if I have found a little bit of release, at least from the standpoint of the part of like how abrasive and how disruptive these people could be, and how like I guess like in terms of like finding solutions for it, I haven't solved everything, okay, but I feel like if I don't share what I know, it's like I'll be like a miser keeping it to myself, and it's like that's not good either.
Right. Well, the thing is with the channel, and a lot of people don't figure this out. You want to be consistent. You don't want to go with all these fads like the lawsuits and all that stuff out there. You do not want to be confrontational, and you want to be consistent and stable. And
Mhm.
a lot of people just aren't willing to do that, and they're
It's not
just
easy,
venting.
man.
They're venting too much. I don't know. I don't know about your channel or not, but I know a lot of other targets out there are just venting, and it's like what that some people criticize me because I don't want swearing, and I think we need stability, and I want to have credibility.
Right, you
And
have rules and standards for your channel, so it's up to us to maintain that as we're a part of your work here.
Well, I just, I'm just saying that, yeah, what you're getting at is that you're trying to emulate consistency, and that the people are apprehensive of you. That eventually that will go away,
I
right?
think ultimately it will. I think ultimately it will.
Okay, well, that's
Yeah.
that's a good plan. Like I said, there's a
Yeah.
way to do that. Just like workplace harassment.
Mhm.
You deal with the disinformation and people are attacking you or whatever, but sometimes you can win them over
Bro,
because, yeah.
I was in a situation. I'm sorry to interrupt. I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was a dishwasher at one point, and I couldn't get a job doing other stuff. I mean, I have high level technology skills, but I was a dishwasher, right? Because I needed money, right? And so I was a dishwasher, and they would harass me a lot. And they would one person would come by and they throw dishes on the table and it'd make my nerves get all jangled up because I have these. I'm kind of sensitive to sounds in my environment, and they would toss the dishes on the table, and this other person would sit like on top of their the back of their trunk when I pulled in, like a stranger would sit there in the back, hanging out in the back parking lot, like staring at me when I drove in, and it's like trying to intimidate me and stuff. And then this one guy who came in, I met him, and it was washing dishes, and I was introduced to him. I'm not gonna mention names. And he came in and he threw up this sand sign, like, oh, that's what you're involved in, kind of thing. And so I was like, oh, well, he gets my attention. So he started bragging about how much money he makes and then he starts talking about, like, oh, I make so much money. I make so much money. Oh, I'm so rich. Oh my, I'm so rich, so rich, so nice. And he used to, and I asked him at one point, hey man, do you harass people on the job for money? And it's like, he didn't want to answer. He could and it's like and I felt like, no names, but like the thing of it is like he said, like, don't you ask me again. But the thing of it is like when I found out that he died, I was very surprised because I prayed to the one. I said, dear one infinite, if the man lied to me, I pray that he something like I pray for divine intervention, or I pray not be able to lie to me again, something like that. Because because he tried to intimidate me. I think it seemed like it. And that's kind of serious. So, but the thing of it is, like, I asked him, like, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I asked him, like, hey, man, do you harass people on the job like that? And he didn't want to answer. I didn't force the issue, but the truth of the matter is he lied by omission, and he lied by not answering the question by omission. That's stonewalling. And I said to the one in prayer, or God in prayer, Alpha Omega, I pray for divine intervention to his life. I pray that if he lied to me about serious matters of conscience, I pray that he not be able to do so. And like something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was, but the one listens to my prayers, and he, like I said, when he came back, and this isn't the first time that kind of thing happens, right?
Yeah.
And I know we're talking the sharp end of the business. It's not really easy to talk about, because we don't want to. But the thing of it is if I'm blameless, man, that's what I am. I'm blameless. I've been doing this for a while now, and I like what I do. It's just that it's like taking a lighter, right? And you light a fire, right?
Okay.
If all I'm responsible for is striking a match or lighting a big lighter, it's like the fire spreads on its own.
Okay, so you're taking that situation and it's like a martial arts move where it comes back at them rather than destroying you.
It's like it grows independently of me. I just pray that it happens after they start. If they get my attention big enough, if they really make me angry or something, I'll go after. At that point, my compassion will be like, okay. I'll just be like, okay, look, hey, I need to clarify something. Are you? And I don't need to investigate everybody because there's plenty of friendly people out there that are in the program that are trapped. And I'm not trying to be punitive with everybody, but I mean there are friendly people out there. It's just that, like, when somebody gets my attention here or there, I'll ask them a question, and then if they lie to me, it's like then I asked the one to intervene, to divine intervention.
Okay, well, no, I think we understand. Yeah, you've explained that pretty good. Would you like to add anything before we end the show?
No, sir. That's it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for coming on. I appreciate that.
Okay, sure. Have a good day. God be with you.
Uh-huh. Well, it's that time, and I'd like to thank everybody for coming in and acting like adults. If you haven't hit the like button, please do. We want to get this stuff out to other targets. I've got a lot of material on the channel, and in my opinion, it's something that targets need to look at, and especially if you're a new target individual. As far as solutions, we talk about those: non-reaction and simplifying your life, taking environmental control as much as possible without engaging or playing into the game dynamic, because they want you in that, because they want to control you emotionally. And remember that the gang stalking is very scientific, and trauma, well, it equals control, at least in their mind. And you have to be aware that they have invaded your mind, and that's what they're doing when they traumatize you. And it's more scientific than I understood. I underestimated it, and like a lot of targets, I thought, "Well, this stuff is just going to be over." They're coming in, and they want to get me, or they want to get a pound of flesh, or they want to be domination, play domination game or whatever. But it kept going, and I had no idea what I was in for. I'd like to thank everyone for helping support me in the channel. The interview link is in the description. And if you want to get a hold of me, Harassment Support Group 911 on Facebook. The link is in the description. God bless. Be good to yourselves. Be safe.